Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Viv Europe's podcast. We have a very amazing guest today. We have Laila here, and we're going to be talking about navigating jobs and moving to a new country with a work visa, how that was like for her, and the process of, just adjusting to Portugal in a new country.
So, hello, my name is Laila. I've been living in Portugal for almost 8 years now, and I'm actually from Brazil. And thank you for inviting me, and I would love to talk about my experience here.
So, Lyle, when you thought about moving to Portugal, or that process of moving from Brazil to Portugal 8 years ago, things were entirely different. Getting visa was entirely different. There were also not as many opportunities now, as Portugal has made it a lot easier to get a job seeker visa. Then we also have the digital nomad visa now that launched in 2022. So when these visas weren't there, what was the process like for you? And did you initially want to move to Portugal? Was this like just, one of the countries on your list of countries? What was that experience like for you?
Um, so, my experience was not the traditional one or the what normally people have when they get the work visa. It was a little bit by chance because I actually got the opportunity through a nonprofit organization called ISEC. And at the time, I wasn't looking for a specific country. I just liked what they did. And at that year, they just started this program with startups. And I thought it was very interesting because at the time I was working at an incubator and I would love to work on the other side with the startups instead of in the incubator. So I thought it was a great opportunity. And I always wanted to live abroad. My actually dream country at that time was Canada. I still love Canada and I would still love to live there again because in the past I went there
Oh,
to
wow.
study and I spent almost a year there. And I thought, oh, what a great opportunity to go there to work. But then when they share with me, when ISAC share with me the opportunities they had at the time, I think there were two that I was really interested. One was the one that I ended up accepting in Portugal in a city called Braga that I never heard before because I've been to Portugal before that, but only to Lisbon. And actually, at the time, my first impression of Lisbon was horrible
Yeah.
because I mean, this was like 20 years ago. So I thought the city was dirty, it felt like abandoned. I think at the time Portugal was going through a financial crisis. So it was not in the best place. So I had this bad impression of it. And the other opportunity was in, I think, Peru. And it seemed interesting because I would be able to use my Spanish to work like in a professional environment. But then when I did the interview for both companies, the startup in Portugal, they really ask like, oh, do you feel because the contract you have with ISAC, I didn't say that before, but it's good to mention. It's only for a period of time. So when you start working for that company, you know when it's gonna end. So it could be a 1 year contract, it could be like a 6 months, but I think the startup program it was like 3 months. I'm not 100% sure, but you can check if you are interested. You can check with ISAC how it works. I know they also have some requirements for you to participate in one of their programs. Besides startup, they also have internships in big companies, medium-sized companies, and also the volunteering, which I think is their most famous program. But then going back to the company at that time, I thought it was interesting that they asked me like, oh, if we like you and we want you to stay, do you think it's something that will interest you to like move to another country? And I was like, yeah, that would be amazing because if I
Uh-huh.
like sign a
Oh,
contract with you guys, I will have to leave my job right now because I had a job at that time in Brazil, in Rio. And they were like,
Yeah.
okay. And then they called me a few days later saying that they really like me and that they want me to go there. So I'll try to summarize, but at the end,
That's amazing.
uh, those 3 months worked really well. They really liked me and they wanted me to work with them like in a full-time job. And but I had to go back to Brazil to get the work visa. I couldn't like
Right. Yeah.
continue there because I didn't have the work visa at the time. So when I came back to Brazil, I learned that they needed to go through a process to get me this work visa. So it wasn't that simple. I don't know if the process now is the same, but at the time they had to open this job opportunity that I was gonna apply as well for people in Portugal. So they had to open the job and they had to prove that they tried to hire Portuguese for the job or a person resident in Portugal for the job.
Yeah.
And so they had to do that for a time, and then they had to go to this government agency to get these documents saying that they tried to find someone for the job, but they didn't find anything because it was like a specific job or that needed to be an expert to do it. And then they send this all these documents to me. So the company has to provide the documents for you to request the visa. And at that time, I know that now is also different, but at that time, I had to go to the consulate in Rio to do it wasn't
Right.
like an interview, but I had to go there in person to give them all the documents needed. And then after a few weeks, I got my visa because now I know that it's through VSF.
Hmm.
And then when you get to Portugal, you get to do everything through IMA.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, but it was basically it. So it was a little bit unconventional.
That's interesting how you got the opportunity to work there, test it out as well, and then, go back to the decision of whether you want to continue there. How you lived in Braga, where you didn't even visit. It was a completely new environment, setting up everything from scratch, also figuring out how to find your own community there as an expat, and then working and, just creating your life from scratch. Were there any sort of challenges that you faced, or anywhere you sort of thought maybe there was an ounce of doubt of maybe like a bad decision or anything like that?
Yes. I told you this before, but I think when I arrived, I was rethinking all the decisions I made to get there because I was like, so Braga is in the north of Portugal, which
Hmm.
in winter it rains a lot, like a lot, a lot.
Hmm.
I think something almost like London, not as bad as London in England, but close to it. So it rained for like an entire month. And I used to live in Rio. So I was used
Oh
to
God.
very sunny days and clear weather. So I didn't mind the cold because it's also cold. It could get to 0 degrees, sometimes -1 or 2, not less than that. But it gets cold comparing to Brazil. But that didn't bother me. What bothered was the rain. It's very rainy through the entire winter, which is
Hmm.
also funny because Brazil is the opposite. In Brazil, normally it rains a lot in summertime, and here it rains a lot in winter, and summers are really dry. Doesn't rain at all, like almost nothing. So yeah, the weather
Yeah.
was something that I needed to adapt because we are not very used to like gloomy winters, like a blue winters, as people say. So that was something. But then I think because I speak Portuguese and they speak Portuguese, that barrier was a little easier. Although a lot of people don't know that, but our Portuguese are very different and
Yeah.
we are not like very used to listen the Portuguese from Portugal in Brazil. So at the beginning was hard to understand what they were saying, especially if it was like a group of people talking, because they would talk faster. And then I had to really like slowly pay
Yeah.
attention at the movements, the mouth movements, to understand, because it's not only the accent, there are a lot of words that are different, and the way they speak some words is also different. Sometimes I feel like some words they say are very similar to Spanish, which for me, because I know Spanish, it was easier, but sometimes it was just completely different and it was really, really hard to understand. But I had to do immersive because the company that I worked with was just Portuguese people. So I was the only
Mm.
foreigner, was the only one that was not from Portugal.
Mm.
So I had to learn, like it was something that it was needed. I had to learn how they speak the different words, and I had to learn how to listen and understand everything. But I mean, for like in English and American, like Chinese, it would be much harder because they would also
Yeah.
have language barrier for sure. But as I said, since I came here to work, it was easier to make friends because I could make
Yeah.
friends at work. And another thing was that I also, at the time when I got here, I didn't come with my husband. So I was living, sharing an apartment with two other girls. So there was also another way to make friends, the living situation. But in general, I think it's hard, like if you're not working or studying, or you are a very like outgoing person, I think it would be a little hard to make friends. Although Portuguese
Yeah.
people in general are very nice, I think they're really like family oriented. And comparing to Brazil, at least, like Brazil, sometimes you can meet someone in the line for the supermarket or at the beach, someone sits next to you and you start having a conversation. And I don't feel this is the same here exactly. Although they're very friendly,
Yeah.
they're very, if you ask something, if you need directions, people will help you. I wouldn't say that it's that easy to make friends, but I think if you're trying to engage in the community, maybe doing like a Portuguese course if you're not a Portuguese speaker, or maybe doing some other type of course like a ceramic course. Uh,
Mm.
I don't know, anything that you were interested in, or studying something that you're interested in, or I don't know, something that you have a space that you have to communicate with people for a little longer. I think you'll be an opportunity to make friends. And I know there are a lot of expats communities here, and they do a lot of events. For example, for my community, the Brazilians, I see events all the times going on. I know it will be a little easier because there is a big Brazilian community, but I see other communities growing, a lot of Chinese, a lot of Americans, a lot of British. So there's always a way to get together, because I think it's important to do both. Like it's good to have an expat community. So you have people that are going through the same as you. I think that's really helpful, especially because, and we're probably going to talk about this, about the bureaucracy of the visa, of
Yeah.
IMA, and all the documents and everything you have to do here, because a lot of things are different from back home. Even like getting your electricity at home is different than it is in Brazil. So having someone to help you through this, it's great. But then you also want to be part of the culture here. So it's important to have people that are from here as friends, as people you know, and um, learning more about their culture, about everything about Portugal. Um, so yeah, I can say I'm lucky that I have both, and yeah.
100% agree when you're talking about learning Portuguese or just integrating with the local community a bit more, because when you're moving as an outsider now in 2025, we can see that Portugal is a lot more diverse than it was maybe 8 years ago. The entire like demographic was completely different. Now there is a huge expat community, still you'll find that, around 35% are still Brazilians. So it's a lot easier for, Brazilians to integrate. And you see a bunch of Brazilians moving to Portugal every year. But then from, people from other countries that are moving, it's important to learn the language, not only to integrate into the community and learn how, things happen, but also to respect the culture, because you're moving, you're starting your life from scratch. You don't want to, have that approach of, oh, why don't they speak English here? You need to sort of realize that you're living in a new country, you're moving to a new country. Things are going to be different. And I see how it's obviously, fortunately, a lot easier for Brazilians to have a similar language, and it's much easier. But for people coming from other countries, we see a bit of hesitation when, they want to learn the language or integrate with locals. But it's really important to do so. And in terms of the culture, did you, because I think you've worked in Brazil for quite a few years as well. So did you notice any like difference in the work culture in Brazil and Portugal? Because we have a bunch of clients that move to Portugal on like a job seeker visa or, a work visa. So it would be interesting to know that perspective.
Yeah, it's completely different, I would say, because they have a much, much better work-life balance than we do in Brazil. I feel like
Interesting.
Brazil has a very similar work environment as in the US, where we work a
Mhm.
lot, we have to work overtime. I'm speaking this in general, like from my
Mm,
past experience in Brazil. Um, so it's like if it is the time for you to leave, it's bad that you leave. You know what I mean? It's
right.
like you were kind of, it's not something that people say, but you're kind of required to stay
Yeah.
more, like the rule that you can leave before your boss or something like that, that we have in Brazil, that we have always to work extra time. And here is not like that. I feel like, oh, it's my time, I'll have to leave, or maybe today I have a little more to work, I'll stay a little longer, it's okay. But in general, like even if you, oh, I need to go to the doctor or something, it's okay as well, like to leave for a couple hours or even to have a half day off. I feel like it's much more flexible in that way, and it's also a lot less stressful also. I mean, there is the pressure to get results, of course, it's a company, they need to have profit, but I feel like it's
Of course.
not
Yeah.
like it was in Brazil. And I feel like the US is very similar in that way. And I feel like people are not this like money oriented, like, oh, I have to be rich, I have to earn a lot of
Mhm.
money. I feel people here in general is, they're not like that. This is kind of good and bad in a way. In general, I think it's good, because even if you have like a small restaurant, if you have a small company, they are not like crazy to get bigger, have more franchise or anything. They would just go by like, oh, I earn my money here, I'm good with what I earn, and that works. And I feel
Mhm.
also that's one of the reasons why the housing issue had such a big impact here, because their wages are very low in general and they don't have any extra income. So when the housing started to be double, triple the price, it was like no one could pay. And then, yeah, so I feel like the way they kind of feel about their jobs, that it's not everything, it's like money is not everything. I feel like it's very different from Brazil. And then, but there is also the bad side of it, because sometimes you need a specific service or someone to help you with something in your house, or any type of situation like that, that you need someone to help you. And then it's very difficult, because as I said, sometimes they will just, oh, I don't want to do this week, I have something else to do, and then they come the other week, and then the other week you call, and then you don't get anything to help you. Because yeah, they're not like, they won't do anything for money, they will think about themselves and their lives first, and then about their job. But as I said, this is not, I'm not speaking about the entire population. Each person is different. I'm just speaking at my experience, comparing the work life balance here and back in Brazil, and specifically in Rio, which is where I used to live and where I used to work. But yeah, I feel like it's very different, and I feel like this is not only Portuguese. I think it's European in a way, because I feel that other countries in Europe are like this as well. We know that in
They're
Spain they
similar,
have
yeah.
the siesta, so it's important to have a rest after lunch. Um, so I feel it's the kind of the mentality here is different towards, like, there is that expression that says you live to work or you work to live, and I feel that here, they work to live.
And that's exactly why more and more people are wanting to move to Portugal, because there is that culture to appreciate life and living just slowly and appreciating what you have instead of, working. So we've talked a bunch about work, but outside of work, can you recall the entire process of moving with your partner and starting your life from scratch, finding housing or finding, the perfect setup for you and your partner and building a social life from scratch? How was that experience like?
Yeah, that was something. So at first, as I said, I came through an ISA contract. So
Yeah.
they arranged the place I would live and everything. So that was easy. And I came by myself. So because I had to leave my job, I came by myself. And my husband, he was still in Brazil working at his job before we could decide anything. And that's what I say to people, like, don't make a hasty decision, because we see a lot of people selling their houses even before getting a visa. Don't do that. So plan
Mhm.
ahead, think about it. So the way we did, we wanted to test the waters a little bit. So I came first by myself to see if this was gonna work out or not. So he kept his job there, and I came here. Of course, I was getting paid for this as well, so I was working. But yeah, but I risked a little because I left my job to come and work for this startup, and then I had to go back to Brazil. And when it finally worked out, we came together, me and my husband. So he also had to leave his job, but I had a job guaranteed here.
Yeah.
So at that time, we didn't need 1 year rental like people need now. So it was
It
much
was it
easier.
was
I
much
think,
easier. Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember how long we needed the rental to be, but I think it was like 2 months or something. I don't think they really looked through it. Like, it didn't matter a lot to them. Like, you just needed to prove that you had something. We got an Airbnb, just to give you an idea, for I think it was 2 months, so that we had time to look through apartments.
Mm.
But it was funny because even at that time, it wasn't that
Mm.
easy to get a rental in Braga. So the market, I feel like it was starting to get kind of warm, like the demand was starting to get a little higher. So I remember that we were calling a bunch of places. We were going through Idealista, Imóvel Virtual, all these platforms that people list their properties. And I remember that sometimes we would call and they say, oh, it's already rented. A bunch of times we would schedule a visit, and then before the day we were to visit, they'll call and say, oh, it's rented already. I remember once we went to the place, and when we got there to talk to the real estate agent, he was like, oh, the couple before you just rented the apartment. We were like, oh my God, we're not
Wow.
feeling very lucky. Yeah. So this went
That must have
on.
been.
Yeah, it was frustrating. So this went on for a while. And then we had to rent another Airbnb for another month. So it was like 3 months looking for an apartment. And then we finally did this visit to an apartment. And we were like, we liked it. We didn't love it because it didn't have furniture. Like it had a few, but it was very, very old, which is common here in Portugal. Um, so we knew we would need to spend a
Yeah.
little money in furniture. But we were like, it's better to get this one and then we see what we do, because the price was really good at that time. He was very different than now. Just to give you an idea, I think we
Mm.
rented a one bedroom apartment in Braga in a very good location, very, very good, close to a supermarket, to the city center and everything. And I think it was 320 euros.
Wow.
So, yeah, nowadays
And
that's
it's
impossible.
impossible.
It's
Impossible. And
impossible.
Praga is very close to Porto as well, so you have that freedom to
It
travel.
is. Yeah, and I can imagine, because at the time it was already very hard for us to find an apartment. So I cannot imagine how it is right now, because at the time I remember it was
Mhm.
hard. Like we went through months of trying to do visits, and everything got rented before we had the opportunity to see it. But now I can imagine that is even worse. So, and I know that now also people have to do before even coming to Portugal, which is frustrating because you have to pay before you are able to even live at the place, which is crazy. So that's why I think it's important to have someone to help you through it, like a real estate agency, anyone that can help you through this. Because, I mean, we saw a lot of bad places. There are also always some scammers. This is everywhere can happen. We saw one online because there
Yeah.
was like he had these great photos of the place. We're like, oh, it's brand new and the price is so good, so we already thought that was strange. But then when we contacted him, he
Mhm.
didn't want to call or anything. And he said, oh, I'm living abroad, so you have to pay me before I give you the keys. And we're like, yeah, we're not doing
It's a red
this. So,
flag. Yeah.
yeah, so for sure he was a scammer. So be aware of red flags in that way. Because I know there is kind of a race to find a rental, but don't just agree to anything just to get a rental to prove um, you have a place to stay. So be very careful. Um, but yeah, but other than that, I think comparing to now, it was much better. But we still had this challenge of trying to find a place, because at that time there was already a demand. Portugal was getting to be a little more well known globally. People were like looking to
It's
come to
starting to be
Portugal.
popular. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was not like my situation, because my situation was, yeah, I just want to live somewhere abroad, and I thought that Portugal was good because it was in Europe. It seemed like a good opportunity to work at that company at that time, and I actually ended up staying at the company for more than 5 years. So it was great for me professionally.
Wow.
Yeah, but then yeah, so it wasn't a choice for me to live in Portugal, but now a lot of people are coming because they chose Portugal. So the demand is much higher than at that time. So things are a lot more expensive. So probably there are a lot more scammers. There's
A
gonna
lot
be
more.
probably a lot of people bidding for the same place. So yeah, I think it's important for you to have someone to help you through this, because it's very challenging now.
And not just in terms of, the fear of getting scammed, but also in terms of, it's difficult to find housing. It's difficult for you to just get an appointment with IMA. So you have to make sure that the application that you're filling in, you have all the documents in check, everything's updated. You're going through like a process where it's already really difficult for you to get there. So to reach point B, you need to make sure that at point A, you're making the right decision. You are dealing with, preferably a company that can help you with this process, and someone who has specialists on board, lawyers on board, that can help you make sure that your application is going to be, or is, likely to be accepted in the first try, because you're already going through the hassle of, finding housing for this. A lot of people, they're moving with families. It's a big move for people who, even if you're moving alone or if you're moving with a partner, it's still a big move. It takes like an emotional toll on you as well. So there's so many aspects to it, and you want to make sure that you're doing it right. There's no other choice.
Yeah. And I can tell you, like, even back
Decision.
then, we are Portuguese speakers, but even back then, it was challenging to grow through the process because although you can find a lot of information online, the truth is, and back then it was SEF, it was in IMA, so it was a different agency. But even back then, it was very challenging because sometimes you would see online and even on official websites, I'm not saying like on some blog or anything, but official websites. So you find that the requirement was this and that document that you had for the interview with Seth. And then we would get there and then they will say, oh, we also need this document. And we will be like, but there's nothing about this on the website. But then they will be like, yeah, but we still need this document. And then we'll be like,
You can never be sure.
what can you do in that case? So, and I remember there was once like we went to have this appointment in Braga, in Seth Braga. And when we got there, she was like, oh, we need copies of everything, all the documents. And we're like, oh, but there was nothing about this online. Like, we didn't say anything. But she was like, yeah, you need copies. And then we asked her, oh, please, can we just go get some copies and come back? And at that time, they let us because it wasn't as it is today. Because I think today they might not let us. We would have to schedule another appointment maybe. But then we went to a place close by, got the copies, and got back there, and okay, everything's fine. But then we had to renew our permit, but then we were only able to schedule in Porto, so we had to go to another city. And we got there, we're like, oh no, this time we will be prepared. We have all the copies necessary, so we printed everything. And when we got there, the lady was like, oh, what is this? And we're like, oh, the copies you guys asked for. And she was like, oh, you don't need any copies. And we were like, we spent all this money because there are a lot of documents. So it was like almost a book of copies. And they were like, oh, no, we don't need any copies. And we're like, yeah. Okay, so as you can see, just by changing from one SEF to another, or now from one IMA to another, they can require different documents or different like specifics or whatever. And then, yeah, you were never prepared for this because even if you are really, really, really prepared, you read everything online, you read the official website, these type of things can happen. And at the time, we thought because we are Portuguese speakers, like it wouldn't be an issue, like, oh, we can do it by ourselves. But yeah, but it was really challenging. And at the time, I remember also that when I got the visa, it was like the work visa at that time was like a 6 months visa that you could renovate for another year. And then after that year, I think it was for 2 years. So it wasn't the 3 years that it is now. So I was going to SEF almost like every other year. So it was a lot. But at the time, it was much easier because like you could just like go to SEF in person and ask for information. You could send emails and they would reply to you because it didn't have as a high demand as they have right now. So it was easier to communicate, but it still was really challenging because the information was different everywhere you ask. So if you went there in person, they would say something. If you ask for email, they would say another thing. So it was very confusing, and it wasn't like a straight answer. So it was really challenging, that part. But I mean, we're kind of used to it because back in Brazil we do have a lot of bureaucracy, and you do have some kind of misguided information out there, but still, since it's something that is related to you staying in another country legally, I think the pressure
It's
really
much
it
harder.
really gets to you. Yeah, because you don't want to be in a situation your permit is expired, because I know a lot of people are in that situation. And actually this year I was in that situation for a while until I got my citizenship. And it's very concerning, like, because you were afraid to travel because you don't know if anything could happen to you, because you
You
know
don't
that
know.
I'm against that. We know that you guys are have your permits expired, but until whatever date, it's okay to be with your permit expired. I think now is until October, if I'm not mistaken. They give us this deadline so you're not in an illegal situation. But still, you don't have your permit, like your real like permit is expired, and then you were nervous, you were concerned, and then you have to stay in the country, you cannot travel. And then if you need anything like to show your document, you don't have an ID or anything to prove that you're legal because it's expired. I mean, it's not an ideal situation because you're trying to schedule an appointment, you're trying to rectify the situation, and then it's very frustrating because you can't, because you don't get a reply. You cannot schedule an appointment. You cannot get any information of how to solve this issue. So, yeah.
And that's just the reality of what the situation is now. And, we feel like it's very important to highlight this. And it's not to discourage anyone, but anyone who is thinking of moving to Portugal, these are very real issues. And immigration in general, it's getting tougher. So you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, it needs to be right. And you're going through proper channels of, getting it done.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any sort of advice for, couples moving to Portugal or to any other new country, and anything that felt like, could have been easier if you were better prepared?
As I said, I planned in the way that I wanted to move abroad, and I plan with my husband, okay, how it's gonna be like. And we saw this opportunity with Isaac and seemed perfect for us because we would be able to test it to see how it goes. And then if not, I would go back to Brazil and get another job there. So I know that is not an option for everyone, because in a lot of cases, you get the contract and you come here to spend like a year or whatever the contract is. So you cannot kind of like test the waters a little bit to see how you feel. But I can tell you this, like for me, Braga seemed interesting also because it was a smaller city. I felt that living in Rio, which has a population of 6 million people, so it's a big city. So to give an idea, Braga has less than 200,000 in population, so it's a lot smaller. But I wanted this, like I was at a certain age that I felt like, oh, I want to be in a city, to have kids, to have like a calmer life, to be able to walk in the street at night, to feel safe. So in that way, I felt Portugal and Braga would be what I wanted for my life, for my future. And for a time, it was great. I still have great love for Braga. I really like Braga. But I felt like I was missing a few things of living in a big city. For example, having like a metro, like a lot of options for transportation, having a lot of options for entertaining, um,
Mm.
having a lot of restaurant options. I love to go out, so for me that was important. And in Braga, I felt a little bit like I was always going to the same restaurants. There was not a lot of options to go to like a theater or to go to like a museum or anything like that. I would have to go to Porto or Lisbon. Um, so I felt that was missing a little bit in my life. So we decided to move to Porto, and now we live in Porto. So that was a big decision for us. It was easy for us, of course, because we work remotely. I know that if you don't, it's going to be harder because you have to stay closer to your job. But for us, it was a big change, and I feel that I'm much happier now in Porto. And I mean, if this happens to you, you come to Portugal, you decide on a city, and then you regret, you can always move. Like if you are in a situation that you can, because I feel that
Absolutely. Yeah.
people sometimes they are very picky about the place that they're gonna live, especially because now they have to choose before moving. And a lot of people don't even know the place. They never been to the place. So one tip that I would give, like one hack that I would give is um, first try, like if you have the opportunity, try to do like a scouting trip, or maybe talk to people. If you know someone that lives in Portugal, talk to them about what you're looking for as a place to live, what you like and don't like. Because for me, I thought that I would love a smaller city, but then I thought, okay, this is maybe a little too small for you, because we have to keep that in mind. Like Braga is not a
Yeah.
small city in Portugal, because Portugal is a small country. It has like 10
Yeah.
million people in population. So things are very different here in Europe because the countries are smaller in population. So for here, Braga is a big city, or at least a medium size, but comparing to Brazil, it's a very small town. So
Small.
it's very
Yeah.
so keep that in mind. Not that, because I feel like if you get a small town in Brazil and compared to a city like Braga, is very different, because Braga still has structure. They have good supermarket chains, they have big malls, so they have the structure, but they won't be, it's not as big as Porto and Lisbon. So if you like to have access to all these things that a big city has, you'll probably be happier in Lisbon or Lisbon region, and Porto region. But if not, if you like the experience of living in smaller city, doesn't bother you to live in a smaller city, you have a lot of options as well. So I think try to investigate a little bit if you don't know, and if you're not, if you don't have to, if you don't have an opportunity to come, I mean, traveling here or through a scouting trip, just ask people, maybe go to groups on Facebook or forums online that you can ask about the different cities to get to know a little bit more about the experience. But also, I know that even if you have a 1 year contract rental, normally I think you can give up after 1/3 of the contract, right? Or something like
Yeah.
that. So you have this opportunity as well. So if you'll be living for a few months in that place and you're like, oh, I really don't like that city, like maybe it's not for me, you can always try and move. But I think it's important to have some time here to get to know the country to make a better decision. And don't come, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'll just buy a house. Don't do that before getting to know. It's very risky, because one thing is renting, which you can just, after a while you can try to have another rental and move to another place. But if you buy, I mean, if a huge commitment, especially if you're gonna do a mortgage or something like that, it's gonna be an entire hassle. If you're not, if you're like, oh, I don't really like this city, maybe I like somewhere else, and then you have to sell the property and everything. So yeah, I would say maybe rental is a better option at the beginning to kind of experience the place. But if even before that, you can maybe travel here, do a scouting trip or whatever, and experience a little bit of the place before choosing, I think that would be great.
100% agree with that. And I think it's also important to add that vacationing in Portugal is not the same as traveling in Portugal. You know, when
Yeah.
you are deciding that you want to move, it's a big commitment. So always take out time for like a scouting trip, go to a couple of different cities, you know, just roam around the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah. But I feel like I actually feel that people are exploring a little bit more, which I'm happy about. Like I feel that not everybody's going through Lisbon and
Yeah,
Porto anymore. They're trying the places around Porto, the places around
yeah,
Lisbon. They're trying to go through central Portugal to the Algarve. Like they're trying different places now, which I think is
which
great.
are equally amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. They are a really great place. I know there is a little bit of a language barrier, but I think people will try to
Mm.
work out. And also, you'll be trying to learn in Portuguese as well. So I think this is also something to keep in mind. So I feel like people are exploring more, which is good. Another thing that I would recommend is planning financially,
Yep.
um, because I mean, there is always extra spending when you move to another country. Always there's something that you
100%.
weren't expecting, especially now because now they really go through your finances before they even approve your visa. So it's important to plan ahead in
Mm,
that way. Back then, I don't know how it's now for the work visa, but for me, I remember that I showed some of my, I think my IRS or something, a document from IRS, but I don't remember they even looking at it. You know, it wasn't because I had the work contract, like it wasn't a
mm,
big deal, but I know that it is now. So plan ahead financially in that way, but
it is.
also for the money that you have here, because each person comes in a different situation. Of course, if you're getting the work visa, you come in a little different situation because you come with a job. So you have so if your wage is enough for you to live comfortably, amazing, great for you. But I think it's especially at the beginning, there's going to be extra spending with probably the place you're going to live. Maybe they don't have all the furniture, you need to buy furniture or like plates, cups, or anything that you need for like a basic comfort living. So at the beginning, there's gonna be extra spending, maybe something you need to do with IMA, that you need to pay something, whatever. Like, so be prepared to have some extra money at the beginning. And this is also important because if you come from a different country that is not euro, your currency is not euro, you need to be prepared for this because
Yeah. 100%.
if you need to transfer a lot of money beforehand, you need also to be aware of currency because they change sometimes every day. So it's good to plan ahead the money you're going to
Exchange
transfer
rate.
here so that you're not short of money because, oh, I didn't transfer at that time, or maybe it's too high currency right now, so I need to wait a little while to transfer that amount of
Mm-hmm.
money. You know what I mean? So it's good that you plan ahead for that as well, because the part of transferring money from one country to another, it's very annoying. You always lose some money there. So do your research, see what is the better way to do it, talk to your bank, and yeah, and plan that ahead so that you are not losing or wasting money in the process.
Anyhow, you've settled in Porto now and you love it. I think that's incredible. And thank you so much for sharing your entire journey. And I know that this is going to be incredibly helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope that I could help with the information that I gave everyone. Of course, send questions and comments if you want to learn more about this, about the work visa. I feel that is a very challenging process and a very long journey ahead that you have. I was lucky to get the citizenship in 5 years. I know there's going to be a change now and it's going to take longer. So probably your journey is going to be a little longer than mine. But I mean, just keep the eyes on the goal. Like, if you're loving the experience, if this is what you were expecting for your life, like, because people come because of different reasons. For me,
Mm,
it was really about living abroad, but also like to have a different experience, know a different culture,
yeah.
but also because I wanted to have more quality of life. And I think I do have that. And I
Mm,
never regretted the decision of moving. Of course, sometimes it was very challenging and you rethink everything, all your decisions until where you are.
yeah.
Uh, but I think that there are ups and downs for sure. But if you keep remembering the main reason that you did of this and just kind of keep your eyes on the prize, like this is what I want, and I will go through all the challenges to get it, I think you were worth your while. I know that now it's much harder than it was 8 years ago.
Mm.
But I mean, it's a great experience. I think it was well worth it, and I would do that again for sure. Just make sure you have good people to help you through the process. And yeah, and I hope if you are thinking of moving to Portugal, I hope you enjoy your time here because I think it's an amazing country with amazing people, and I think you could have an amazing life here. I
Nice
mean,
words, nice advice, and coming from someone who's lived in Portugal for 8 years. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care.
thank you,
Bye bye.
Mariam. Thank you, everyone. Bye.